Just want to get a confirmation.
Hi, yes, it's recording.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this webinar is part of a series put on by the ACRM Stroke ISIG to help bring needed information to rehabilitation clinicians and researchers. So we'll share a link for the Stroke ISIG webpage in the chat, and you can see it here. You can look here for more information about ACRM and the Stroke ISIG using the link or by contacting the Stroke ISIG chair, Dr. Elena Donoso Brown, using the contact information provided here. So my name is Amy Vogelini, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the ACRM Stroke ISIG Aphasia and Other Communication Disorders Task Force. That was a mouthful. Mara Steinberg-Lowe is the other co-chair and is also on the call today. And we are so delighted to be able to present this webinar today using the Colorado Motor Speech Framework to classify motor speech disorders, a tutorial. And let me just turn it over. This session is being recorded, so please make sure to mute your mic and turn off your camera during the presentation. We'll have 20 minutes for Q&A or something about that towards the end, so please submit questions via the chat, and Mara and I will try to field it and present it to Dr. Hilger. And with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Allison Hilger, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences at the University of Colorado Boulder and director of the Colorado Motor Speech Lab. Her research focuses on the assessment and classification of motor speech disorders, with particular emphasis on dysarthria and respiratory laryngeal coordination and neurological disease. Dr. Hilger leads the development of the Colorado Motor Speech Framework, which is a clinical tool designed to support differential diagnosis of motor speech disorders. Her work integrates clinical observation, acoustic analysis, and translational tools to improve diagnostic accuracy and clinical decision-making for individuals with neurological speech disorders. And before we get started, I want to advise again that this meeting is being recorded, so mute your mic, turn your camera off during the presentation. We'll have time at the end for the Q&A. So again, submitting questions via the chat. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Hilger. So thank you again, Dr. Hilger, for being with us today.
Wonderful. Okay, let me show the sound. Okay, thank you so much for having me. This is an amazing group, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Okay, just double checking. You can see me, hear me, right?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to do a tutorial on the Colorado Motor Speech Framework. Just so if you're not aware, you can access the CMSF here, https://cmsf.info, and it's freely available. There's an online web form, but there's also downloadable forms as well. Disclosures, we have not received funding for this tool. I've been kind of paying for it out of my startup funds here at CU Boulder, but applying for funding, fingers crossed. But we have no financial, non-financial interests. I do plan on making CEUs in the future, but the tool will always remain freely available. Okay, so I'm gonna go through is what is a CMSF, a quick introduction. I'm actually gonna fly through some of the background because I wanna get to the tutorial, as well as the current limitations. I'm gonna fly through that because I wanna get to the tutorial, and then I'll spend a lot more time on the tutorial, scoring the CMSF, talk about writing up the results and evaluation, and then if we have time, limitations and future directions. Okay, so start off, what is the CMSF? So it's a free online assessment tool. So this is a tool. I do want to emphasize that because it's not a standardized assessment where you'll come out knowing definitively what you're seeing. It's a tool to help you with decision making for classifying motor speech disorders, so dysarthria and apraxia of speech, as well as documenting speech and non-speech observations that can guide future treatment. So I did actually go on and make a lot of aesthetic changes to the tool. So this isn't what the tool looks like anymore, but the content is the same. So if you go on right now, it'll look a little bit differently, but the content is the same. So I've been playing around with how to make it look visually just more accessible. Okay, it started off as an Excel spreadsheet, which looks like this, which can still be downloaded. So if you want to use an Excel spreadsheet, you can go on and download. There's a download link, but I made it into an online web form now to be a lot more user-friendly. So what the tool is we have these speech and non-speech features to look for that are grouped by subsystem. So this is the top one. This is by rate of speech. You can see here in the left-hand side, I'm going to get my laser pointer. Rate of speech is the subsystem, and there are characteristics to look for, and you can check yes or no, whether those are available. Okay, yep, so check yes or no box. So we'll get into limitations later on. There have been some questions in other webinars and tutorials of, why do you have it as a binary of present or not present? And, that's a future direction. I don't want this to be too taxing where for every single feature you have to identify, okay, how severe is that feature? That might be a little bit too cognitively taxing, but it could be something we can incorporate in the future. So I just want to address that really quickly. Then as you click on each feature, it tells you how distinguishing or common that feature is by each motor speech subtype. Or if you don't want to do the typical Mayo system subtyping, you could also do by neural region. Okay, so here is a video. I removed my laser pointer. So you could see here, we have the subtypes, you have the features, and there are definitions for each feature as well. You just hover over the blue, and then you can click on each feature, and the the results will pop up for how distinguishing it is or not distinguishing. So double X or green is highly distinguishing. Yellow or single X means it's common. If it's red or minus sign, it means you shouldn't expect it for that subtype. Then if it's blank, it just kind of means we don't really have any evidence of it's not common, it's not uncommon. Okay, and then after you have all of your features clicked, let's say this is your patient, you can actually go to the bottom and you can hide the unchecked rows so you get a nice visual of what you're seeing. So this one is clearly a hypokinetic dysarthria, very clearly, which is nice. Lots of distinguishing features, and pretty much every feature, actually not pretty much, every feature for this patient was a hypokinetic dysarthria. And we'll talk about mixed dysarthria later on. We also have a section here where you can add in self-rating, estimate intelligibility, estimate naturalness and efficiency, things like that. You can add notes for the patient. And then at the very bottom, we have this. So you can add notes. You're responding well to dopaminergic medication to be like, okay, this is probably Parkinson's, leaning you towards that. Not that we make that diagnosis, but it helps with the medical team as well. And then you have a chart at the end that tallies up all your observations by subtype. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next screen. Okay. So why was the CMSF developed? I'm going to go through this very quickly. So as you are all aware of as practicing clinicians, there are a lot of limitations in motor speech evaluation. We have a few standardized tests, but they're not super great, except for the apraxia battery for adults. I do love that test. But the FDA-2, if you've used it, it's not super helpful. It gives you kind of a visual view of what you're possibly seeing, almost like a density plot, but I don't really know how you interpret that super well. And there is a Bogenhausen dysarthria scales, which was originally developed in German, and I think is being translated to English and brought to the US, but I don't think it's used widely. But most people use unstandardized or informal tools. The Mayo Clinic approach, informal oral MECs like the Shipley and McAfee oral facial examination tool, the Newcastle dysarthria assessment tool, or ASHA has one, or usually people make their own, right? So this brings us to current limitations. Again, this is the FDA-2. I won't bash it too much, but I just think it's really hard to use. I've used it for research to say I've used a tool, an assessment tool, but to be honest, I'm going off of my own clinical expertise at that point because I don't think this tool helps that much. Again, the Bogenhausen is great, but it's in German, and it doesn't give, it gives you information about severity, but it doesn't give you information about subtyping. And the ABA-2, I will say this is an amazing tool. I'm sure you've used it before. So if you do suspect that your patient has apraxia of speech, I do recommend doing a more in-depth assessment using the ABA-2. Okay, unstandardized approaches, informal approaches, the Mayo Clinic, what we're taught in graduate school, great approach. This tool is based off of the Mayo Clinic approach. But as much as I love Charlie Anderson and Brown and Joseph Duffy, no formal assessment or scoring forms have been made for the Mayo Clinic approach, which is why we developed the CMSF. And as I said, a lot of people have used more informal approaches, like making their own tool or using one of these. And they're great, but these tools do not provide a translation into a diagnosis. So you make all your observations, and then what? So here's the Shipley and McAfee. Here's a Newcastle assessment. This one gets closer to translating your observations into a diagnosis, but not super well. So I flew through those. So I just want to say, these are all great tools, but are they easy to use, accessible, and reliable? In acute care, you need things that are fast paced to quickly translate your observations to the diagnoses and goals, as well as things that are affordable. I'm kind of tired of all the cost barriers in our field. I'm sure you all are, these expensive certifications or things like that. So let's do something that's easily available. So that's why we developed this as well. And then reliability as well. Auditory perceptual skills are the gold standard, but they do come with some subjectivity. So we need a tool that more easily translates our observations into a diagnosis to improve reliability. And we do have evidence that the CMSF does improve reliability and sensitivity of diagnosis. Okay, who is our team? So our team is me. I'm the PI in this tool. My name is Allison Hilger. I'm the PI of the Colorado Motor Speech Lab. But I have two amazing SLPs on my team, Kylie Dune-Platero, who right now is at Medical University of South Carolina, and Caitlin Cloud, who's doing her PhD at University of Nebraska. They both, well, Kylie currently works in acute care. Caitlin used to work in acute care, but they worked in acute care and she saw that we needed a tool that was fast and reliable. So the three of us combed the literature to find salient features, put this into starting off with an Excel document, then a PDF, then this online format. And that is how it came to be. Dr. Joseph Duffy came to our first talk at ASHA. Felt like he gave us his approval of the tool, which makes me feel great because this really was developed based off of his years and decades of research experience and output. So because of him, we're able to have a tool like this. So we did use Joseph Duffy's textbook quite a bit because he has such a great consolidation of references for motor speech. And then we used those references to find more references. So we have lots and lots of references that we put together. This is on our website if you want to see some of the references. And then we also have a paper under review that goes through all this as well. Okay, but let's get into tutorial because this is what you're really here for. So again, the web form is what I recommend, the clickable web form if you go to the website here. And on that web form, you can right click and save it as a PDF. And actually, I want to open this up and share. I'm going to change my sharing and actually go to share the web page. Share my window, go to CMSF tool. Okay, so can you see the web page? So this is the webpage, and I first have a pop-up because I am putting together like a clinician network because I want to do more research and put together a group of clinicians who can try the tool out in different case studies and just build up more information about reliability. So if you want to join that, you're welcome to. But here's the tool. You click Start Assessment. It brings you to the tool here. And first thing is you can change your view. You can do blind mode, which I recommend starting in, or you could have the results be revealed as you go through. So blind mode, you have your patient in front of you and you're clicking what you're noticing. And this helps you not be biased into thinking, okay, I'm seeing a spastic dysarthria. What else is spastic dysarthria? So this helps prevent some of the bias that may be associated with doing the tool as you're seeing a patient. But let's say I'm doing this and I see this. Okay, then I can reveal the results. Okay, this is what I'm seeing. Then I go to the bottom and I can hide the unchecked rows. And now, okay, wow, this is probably likely a spastic dysarthria. There are some distinguishing features here. A couple cool updates here is we've created this epic clinical summary. And so what you click here and what you add here will automatically populate into this epic clinical summary, or you can copy the smart phrase and edit it. I do want to note though, you still have to revise this last part. We don't do this for you. You have to say the possible involvement of the neural area, what motor speech subtype you see, and what severity you give it. But this will write down what you're noticing here in terms of the features and what you put for the clinical ratings. Okay, so I just wanted to put that there and then I'll go back to my slides. Back to my slides and make sure I'm sharing my sound. Okay, so, but as I mentioned, you could also do it on paper. There's a downloadable paper form, or there's a downloadable Excel form as well. Okay, languages, it's currently only in English, but I have a project underway with a group in Chile to translate it into Spanish. And that project is very soon to be done. I think we're going to launch a Spanish version by October. Then I also have a potential project in Hebrew from a group in Israel, but that project is taking a little bit longer due to some of the political climate going on there. Okay, so the domains that this assesses, so we really want this to be a comprehensive assessment tool of important subsystems for speech. So we start with rate of speech, then we have fluency and cadence, which is kind of like, how fluent is the speech, beyond just rate of speech. Then we have vocal loudness, then vocal quality and respiration, then word and phrasal stress, then articulation, then resonance, and then we have a special section for DDK alone. And then like I said, we had that section for ratings for patient self-rating, and then estimates of intelligibility, naturalness, and efficiency. And then we do have a non-speech section, so like an oral mech, starting with emotional expression, then overall face, then you go through lips, jaw, soft palate, tongue, larynx. And there is an extra supplemental body movement form that you click on. It's a separate tab if you want to look at body movement as well. Okay. So another thing about the tool is when you hover over the domain, it will give you suggested tasks. So these are suggested tasks. They are not required. You could do all of this with just going through the case history with the patient, asking them about, their medical history, and then maybe also doing a maximum phonation time and a DDK, or you could follow our suggested tasks. So this is meant to be flexible because acute care or other settings as well, rehab, acute care, all these medical settings, have to be flexible, right? But if you want to follow what we suggest, we suggest starting with connected speech. And some of these suggestions for connected speech is conversation, informal speech, maybe asking what does a typical day look like for you. Then you could have some sort of narrative task, like describe an image. We have an image called the kite picture that I have a graduate student draw, or you could do a revised cookie theft picture. And then some sort of reading task, like the grandfather passage or caterpillar passage. And I do have all these on the website as well. So an example of the revised cookie theft picture. I love this more than the old cookie theft picture. Love that the dad is now washing the dishes and he's the one making the mistake. That's kind of nice. This is the kite picture that my former student, now SLP, Melanie Esper drew, which I love. Here's some passages, grandfather passage, bamboo passage. There's also a passage in Spanish we have on our website, Sopa de Pescado, out of University of Arizona. They developed this passage. Okay, so first you start with the connected speech task, as I said, and with the connected speech, you should be able to get some observations for a lot of domains. So for rate of speech, fluency and cadence, and vocal loudness. So let's do some practice. So I'm going to go ahead and play an audio clip, and I want you to start thinking about what you're noticing in these sections, and then we'll do it together. So if you want to write in the chat what you hear or just write your own observations, we'll start from there. So here's the first audio clip.
Okay, I wake up in the morning, I do my prayers, my meditation, I get myself ready, and I either go to if I have an appointment, I go to appointment, I'll go to my son's house, because I'm the caregiver for my son. No, he has mental disorders.
Sounds like spastic. Can you give a guess?
Yeah. So I go and
We'll see if you guys are right. Okay, so for the sake of time, that's what I have here. So think about what features you hear. So what I heard, and this is subjective. So this is one of the things with this thing is this is subjective. Sometimes people hear other things that I don't hear. I heard slow rate of speech, short phrases. So she talked very slow. She had short phrases when she talked. I heard syllable segregation. So for those multisyllabic words, some of the syllables were segregated from each other. I think she said that her son has a mental impairment, and she said mental disorder. She said disorder, kind of segregated those syllables. And then for loudness, I put mono loudness and loudness decay. So she was very mono loud, and then as she talked, the loudness got quieter for each utterance. So I don't know, you may have noticed some other things other than me, and that's okay. We don't have to have 100% agreement on what we hear. Okay, next we're going to do vocal quality. So for vocal quality, you want to keep paying attention to the connected speech, but then we also recommend doing a maximum phonation time. So just have the patient take a deep breath and hold it for as long as possible as you can. And let's practice that one.
Allison, real quick.
Yeah.
Is it
yeah.
okay? Are you able to raise the volume on your end a little bit? I noticed
Let
that
me
some people
see.
mentioned it in the chat, but I noticed on my end
It's
when I
kind of quiet.
yeah, when I raised it to the max volume on my own computer, I heard it better, but in
Okay.
case on your
Okay.
end. But thank you so much.
Let's see. I'm not sure because I don't know if I increase my computer volume, if that helps. I guess I could try it. Let me try my computer volume and see if that helps. Oh, but I could try this too. Okay, let's see if that improves things. Okay, Amy, was that better?
Yeah, that was loud and clear. We already have
Okay.
some guesses in the chat.
Perfect. Amazing. Okay, yes. So start thinking, what do you hear for vocal quality? This is what I noticed. So I noticed that she had vocal strain. Do you guys agree with me? Yes, no. This comes from, so then mono pitch comes from her connected speech. That I felt like when she was connected, it was very mono pitch. And then for the maximum phonation time, I noticed pitch instability. So this is one of the challenges. This gets into differences in perception. We have pitch instability here. We also have vocal tremor and rapid vocal flutter. So if you hear, okay, they can't hold a straight a nice clear there's some variation. So what do you pick? It's hard. Kind of go with what you feel most confident in. For her, I don't hear a clear vocal tremor where there's a clear, 3 to 5 hertz variation. I don't hear a vocal flutter either where there's more of a rapid vocal flutter. I just hear a pitch instability, just not super stable pitch. That's what I put. But again, you are welcome to disagree with me on that. Also, she can hold that maximum phonation time pretty long, so I didn't put that. But then we have other things here. So other things I didn't put were, I didn't put breathiness, didn't put aphonia, didn't put hoarseness, didn't hear diplophonia, that would be like 2 pitches, didn't hear pitch breaks. Similarly, I don't hear voice stoppages or rests. I felt like she was not running out of aerial speaking, and then I didn't hear the vocal tremor or rapid vocal flutter. Okay, our next section is word and phrasal stress. Again, this is a good one for while you're doing connected speech tasks, but we have other tasks as well. So I'm going to skip it. I'm not going to play this one. I'm just going to see what you guys hear. So for word and phrasal stress, there are 4 options we have here. We have reduced use of stress, prosodic excess or scanning, atypical silences or pauses, or errors marking stress. So what I put for her is prosodic excess or scanning. So scanning is that like word by word type of speech where I'm going to the store. There's kind of an emphasis placed on every word. Reduce use of stress to be more like a Parkinson's where there's kind of no stress at all. Atypical silences where just atypical silences taking a silence or a pause in an untypical place or atypical place. And errors marking stress, this would be like an apraxia of speech where maybe the wrong syllable is stressed or things like that. Okay, then we have articulation, resonance, and DDK. These are our last domains. Again, you should be thinking of connected speech for these, but we have other tasks as well. For articulation, we have some word repetition, sentence repetition, and then we have an automatic speech task. So I do want to point out okay, for articulation, we have first imprecise consonants, distorted vowels, irregular articulatory breakdown. So they have articulatory errors, but are they regular or irregular? Do you notice articulatory groping? Telescoping is the telescoping of multisyllabic words. So when you have a multisyllabic words and the syllables get pushed together, so think of like a pirate telescope, and then you push the telescope together to make it smaller. That's what's happening to the word. I want to bring caution to this specific one here, deterioration of speech with continuous speaking and improvement with rest. This one is specific for myasthenia gravis. So their speech deteriorates while they talk, maybe during a stress test. Give them maybe 5 minutes of rest and their speech improves. That's the only time you should pick this one. And the last one is fewer errors in automatic speech than connected speech. Okay, so I'll play one clip of hers and then we'll move on for the sake of time.
twist, shrug, stretch.
I'm going to play this one as well really quick. So that was word repetition.
Okay. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
That was automatic speech. Okay, so what did I put for her? I thought she had imprecise consonants, distorted vowels. So I pretty much do almost every person I do an evaluation on. I'm pretty much always putting imprecise consonants. They always have at least some sort of articulatory error and have some sort of imprecise consonants. So I harp on my students when I teach motor speech, when I say, tell me a distinguishing feature of, say, spastic dysarthria. And they put imprecise consonants. I say, that is not a distinguishing feature. It is present in every single subtype. That will not tell you anything about diagnosis. So I always say that. So I pretty much always put that. And then I also, most of the patients I do evaluations on also have some sort of vowel distortion. For her, I also noticed irregular articulatory breakdown where her errors weren't always the same every time. And then I put telescoping. So again, those multisyllabic words were often mushed together. Those syllables were kind of mushed together. Okay, resonance. So for resonance, again, you should be listening to connected speech, but you can also do a couple other tasks. You can have the patient say, bye, Bobby, a puppy, then pinch their nostrils and say, bye, Bobby, a puppy, and does their resonance improve? You can also have them say, my mama makes lemon muffins. And then you could also have a mirror under their nose. For her, I'll play this one. I don't think I noticed any resonance, but I'll play this really quick.
Bye, Bobby, a puppy. Bye, Bobby, a puppy.
Okay, so I don't notice any differences in those productions. She's able to produce plosive sounds, which tells me that she's able to occlude her velopharyngeal port. So I didn't notice anything for resonance. I didn't put anything down for that. And then DDK. So I do have this as a separate section because it's a really important section to notice. For this one, you could put slow rate, irregular rhythm, rapid accelerated, AMRs, overall imprecise articulation. And then we have specifics for pa versus ta versus ka, because we're looking at labial versus lingual articulation. So is there poor labial articulation than lingual articulation that could indicate, cranial nerve impairment specific to labial, facial nerve impairment, versus is there poor lingual articulation for ta and ka versus labial that could indicate hypoglossal nerve impairment? Then the last one is the pataka, the SMR, is that poorly sequenced? So let's listen to her DDKs.
Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. Da, 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 da. Ba, da, 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 da. Ka, 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 ka. Ka, 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 ka. Patika, 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 patika. Patika, 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 patika.
Okay, one interesting observation, because I like to look at respiration too. Notice how she takes a breath sometimes before each padaka. Pataka, pataka. So that's an interesting thing for possible treatments. Okay, for her, I put slow rates. She was pretty slow in everything, pataka and pataka. And then I thought that the pataka was poorly sequenced, but everything else was fine. She didn't really have irregular rhythm. It was just slow. She obviously wasn't fast. And then didn't have like overall imprecise. She was able to produce the sounds. And I didn't notice any difference between lingual or labial articulation. Okay, then as I mentioned, it's important to do this as well, have the patient self-rate their speech, and then get estimates of intelligibility, naturalness, and efficiency. So, I don't have a formal way of assessing intelligibility. You don't have time in clinic, in the hospital, medical settings to have people transcribe the speech samples and get an objective measure of intelligibility. So really, I think our only option at this point is to do a general estimate of what you hear. But I do also recommend, if thinking of naturalness and efficiency, and naturalness is just how natural it sounds. So you could have someone who's 100% intelligible but sounds very unnatural. That's more of a measure of prosody. And then efficiency, how efficiently are they able to produce their message? Again, someone could be 100% intelligible, but is speaking so slowly that they are very inefficient, or they can only produce one word at a time. And then, so as you write up your evaluation, I would think about all these other circumstances as well. For things like intelligibility. Would intelligibility increase or decrease for unfamiliar versus familiar listeners, expert, non-expert listeners, quiet versus loud room, one-on-one versus group, context, no context. So there's a lot of nuance here that this little chart doesn't fully represent. Okay, then we do have the non-speech tasks, okay? So we do have these if you want to use this for a non-speech assessment. First, start with emotional expression. Is there pseudobulbar affect versus a flat affect? Didn't notice that for her. Then we have general oral mech observations. I'm going to put my laser pointer back on. For her, I noticed incoordination or dysmetria, just looking at her from when I met her in person. You could also look for things like muscle atrophy, involuntary unpredictable movements. This would be like a Huntington's disease, the hyperkinetic dysarthria. Tremor, is there action-induced tremor? Is there tremor with sustained movements? Is there tremor at rest? Then you look for face, looking for, is there drooping on the entire side of the face versus just a lower side? Is there bilateral facial weakness, hypotonia, muscle weakness, spasticity, drooling, decreased sensation of the face, or nonverbal oral apraxia? And she didn't have any of these. Now looking at lips and jaw, and also, again, if you hover over this blue thing here, that will give you suggested tasks as well. So you don't have to have this memorized of what to do. It has things like, feel for jaw movements, have them sustain the jaw opening, try to have them not close their jaw, things like that. Typical oral mech tasks. Okay, so for the lips, is there asymmetrical movement? Is there weakness, limited range of motion? Jaw, does the jaw hang open at rest? Does it deviate to one side? Is there weakness when opening or closing? Is there jaw clonus? Is there limited range of movement? And then is there progressive weakening of jaw movements? And she didn't have any of these. Soft palate is always hard with just a bedside assessment. So if you have a fees, probably much better for this. But you can kind of see, does the palate hang low in the mouth? Is there asymmetry? Is there asymmetric movement on phonation? And then I always have people puff their cheeks. And does air escape from the nose when they're puffing their cheeks? Tongue, are there fasciculations, deviation to one side on protrusion? Is there weakness, limited range of motion, diminished ability to curl the tip of the tongue, and then slow movement? She didn't have any of these. And then last is larynx. So again, this is bedside, not perfect. So if you have laryngoscopy, much better than this. But you can have them do a cough or glottal coo. Are those weak? Do you hear inhalatory stridor? Is there a weak cough but strong glottal coo? Or is there a weak cough and a weak coo? So things like that. Okay, and then we have the body movement section. We did make this a separate form based off of Joseph Duffy's recommendation, because he really says that dysarthria and apraxia of speech diagnosis should be made on speech alone or non-speech oral facial observations, but body movement should not inform. If they, let's say they have tremor of their body, but they don't have any voice impairments, then they don't have dysarthria. So it's just for supplementary, but it is helpful. So for her body movements, I noticed she had an ataxic gait, she had dysmetria, and then she had nystagmus of her eyes where she's got the rapid back and forth eye movement. Okay, let's get to scoring. This is really important. Okay, so we've made all our observations. So we can scroll to the end of the form and click hide unchecked rows. So you can go all the way to the bottom of the form. Again, this is the old version of the form. You can see the new website where it has the same functionality, but it looks a little different. Now you can just see the observations you made, which is really nice. Okay, so what I recommend first is looking at the visual pattern of what you see. So we have that table at the end, but the visual pattern is the most important thing for you to see. So what do you see in the visual pattern? Which columns have the most things checked? Where are most of those green double X's? Are there any red minus signs? So that gives you your first glimpse. Okay, So our goals for scoring are, first off, based on the speech observations and then non-speech as confirmatory, which neural areas are indicated. Does this match with the neurological diagnosis? Are there any speech characteristics that do not fit with this diagnosis? Then at the end, what is the primary motor speech disorder? Is there a secondary motor speech disorder? And what is the severity? So these are our goals. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have these neural areas that correspond to each area, and then we have our motor speech subtypes. So I'll run through these really quickly, but this is what you learn in your, full semester long motor speech course. We have flaccid dysarthria, which is often weakness, often due to cranial nerve damage. We have our upper motor neurons. If it's bilateral, it's a spastic dysarthria. If it's unilateral, it's unilateral upper motor neuron dysarthria. We usually see spasticity and slow rate of speech. So this would be common in stroke, ALS, PLS. We have our basal ganglia dysfunction, and if it's a lack of dopamine resulting in rapid rushes of speech, reduced range of motion, reduced loudness, that's typically going to be Parkinson's. Our other basal ganglia dysfunction is going to be lack of movement inhibition, resulting in uncontrolled movements. These would be like a vocal tremor, spasmodic dysphonia, or Huntington's disease. We have our ataxic dysarthria. This is cerebellar dysfunction, resulting in incoordination and poor movement sequencing, often seen in Friedreich's ataxia, or spinal cerebellar ataxia, or cerebellar stroke. And then we have our apraxia speech. This would be left hemisphere damage resulting in poor programming of motor plans for speech, usually from stroke. And then the UUMN is often comorbid. Okay, so for our participants, step one, take a step back. Do you notice any patterns? So I notice there are a lot of boxes checked for the ataxic dysarthria column, okay? And if you look at the table, ataxic dysarthria has the highest number. So the table gives you the total count of yellow plus the total count of green minus the red, and that gives us the highest number for ataxic. So I think there's pretty strong evidence for an ataxic dysarthria. This leads us to our next step, which are distinguishing features. So again, what are distinguishing features? They're going to be either features where there are only a few boxes. So syllable segregation is a distinguishing feature because there aren't that many boxes with checks, or X's, I mean, or features that have a green X for that row. So green X, so let's see, prosthetic excess or scanning fits both of these. It has a green double X, and it also doesn't have many features, okay? Imprecise consonants are not distinguishing. As I mentioned, there's every single subtype has imprecise consonants. So I think for this case, her distinguishing features are syllable segregation, loudness decay, strained vocal quality, prosodic scanning, irregular articulatory breakdown, telescoping, and the DDK being poorly sequenced. So what motor speech disorder is most common? Ataxic dysarthria has all of these distinguishing features except for one, which is strained vocal quality. So that brings us to our next question after that. Okay, so what are non-distinguishing features? These are non-distinguishing features that have a lot of overlap. Slow rate of speech, although this will inform, I think, our secondary motor speech disorder, so I'll hold that in your mind. Mono loudness is very common across motor speech disorders. Mono pitch is also common. Imprecise consonants, again, and distorted vowels are very common. And then slow rate for DDK is also very common. So these are important for treatment planning, but not super helpful for diagnosis. Okay, so based on the number of X's and number of distinguishing features, these provide substantial evidence for an ataxic dysarthria diagnosis. Does this make sense with a neurological diagnosis? So her diagnosis is spinal cerebellar ataxia type 5. So yes, this does make sense. So for the medical team, this provides evidence for this neurological diagnosis, which is helpful because there is genetic testing for spinal cerebellar ataxia, but there are a lot of forms of ataxia that don't have genetic testing. So it is helpful to determine that. And some conditions, Parkinson's is symptomatically diagnosed. And oftentimes people go through a diagnostic, like a 10-year diagnostic journey of, oh, I have Parkinson's. Oh, no, actually, I have progressive supranuclear palsy. Oh, no, actually, I have multiple system atrophy. So this can be really helpful for many cases. Okay, again, why is our diagnosis beneficial for the medical team? I give this example, Parkinson's. Many people present with a classic hypokinetic dysarthria. And if it's a pure hypokinetic dysarthria, that gives some evidence for Parkinson's disease. But let's say someone presents with a classic hypokinetic dysarthria, but they also have some ataxic dysarthria features, then maybe this actually gives evidence against the Parkinson's, and we should instead look at multiple system atrophy or progressive supranuclear palsy. So we can't make neurological diagnoses, but we can help we can say whether our motor speech diagnosis supports or refutes the neurological diagnosis. Okay, so for her, this gives enough evidence for primary diagnosis of ataxic dysarthria. The non-speech features do support this. We see ataxic gait, dysmetria, nystagmus, and incoordination of dysmetria, so that supports it. So yes. So let's get into the mixed dysarthria. Okay, so first, are there features that don't fit with ataxic dysarthria or with a neurological diagnosis? Are there any motor speech subtypes with a lot of X's or double X's? And can those features be explained by the primary diagnosis of ataxic dysarthria? And are there any classic features of another motor speech disorder? So if we look at the charts, there are 3 other subtypes where there are a high number of counts. You have spastic, hyperkinetic, and apraxia of speech. Okay, so first we think about, would it make sense with a neurological diagnosis? Starting with apraxia of speech. Apraxia of speech would not make sense to be a comorbid diagnosis with ataxic dysarthria unless there's something else going on, like unless she also had a stroke, because cerebellar degeneration alone is not going to cause an apraxia of speech. A mixed ataxic spastic dysarthria is common in spinal cerebellar ataxia. So that would make sense for her to have a mixed ataxic spastic because degeneration often continues to the upper motor neurons. A mixed ataxic hyperkinetic dysarthria is not expected, but it is possible. So let's look at our chart as well. Okay, does apraxia of speech make sense? Let's look at all the features here. So notice that every feature for apraxia of speech is either non-distinguishing or it can be explained by the primary diagnosis of ataxic dysarthria. So there's not really enough evidence for an additional apraxia of speech based on the perceptual features alone. Spastic is different. There are 2 features that cannot be explained by ataxic dysarthria: the short phrases and the strained vocal quality. And the strained vocal quality gives me a lot of evidence for spastic dysarthria. Also, the slower to speech is highly distinguishing for spastic dysarthria. So spastic dysarthria, 1, makes sense with a neurological diagnosis. 2, there are features that cannot be explained by the ataxic dysarthria, and these features are classic features of spastic dysarthria. So yes, there is evidence for a mixed ataxic spastic dysarthria, but let's just double check the hyperkinetic, and then I'll speed through so I have time for questions. So hyperkinetic is similar to apraxia of speech. There are 2 features that don't fit with ataxic dysarthria, but these fit with the spastic dysarthria. And so there's more evidence for the mixed ataxic spastic than the ataxic hyperkinetic, and it makes more sense with a neurological diagnosis. So if you put all these together, okay, ataxic spastic has 9 X's, the hyperkinetic has 10 X's, but there are 2 boxes with double X's. So there are 2 distinguishing features for spastic. There's only 1 distinguishing feature for hyperkinetic. And then I think clinical knowledge is the most important thing here. Clinical knowledge, it just makes more sense for there to be an ataxic spastic than for there to be an ataxic hyperkinetic. Progression to the basal ganglia is not common. But you can use your level of confidence. So you can say, I am very confident that there is substantial evidence for an ataxic dysarthria. The spastic, I'm less confident. I think there may be a spastic dysarthria. So I could say this: there's a definite diagnosis of primary ataxic dysarthria with a likely spastic component based on distinguishing features and clinical knowledge of disease progression of spinal cerebellar ataxia type 5. So you don't have to be 100% confident in everything you're seeing. You just need to put in your documentation of how confident you are. And we do have this chart on our website that talks about, for mixed versus pure profiles, what diseases are in there. So for example, spinal cerebellar ataxia is common for ataxic, mixed ataxic spastic, and mixed ataxic flaccid. So this is also helpful as well. Okay, and then severity. The CMSF does not provide severity guidelines, but I recommend just gauging based off of how many features you see. They have a lot of deviant features, and they have poor intelligibility and poor naturalness and efficiency. Go off of that for deciding severity. And I will say Stepancic et al. Found really cool evidence that clinician severity ratings of dysarthric speech are reliable and valid. So trust your estimates of severity. Those are important, valid estimates. Okay, writing up the results. I don't really have time for this, but I do have that epic summary statements. I will say here, just a really quick write-up that I would write for this person. You could say, patient presents with scanning speech, telescoping and multisyllabic words, monolatus and monopitch, and irregular DDK production, which are characteristics that are commonly associated with ataxic dysarthria secondary to SCA5. She also presents with characteristics not commonly associated with cerebellar damage, including slow rate of speech, short phrases, and strained vocal quality, which are features associated with spastic dysarthria, secondary to upper motor neuron dysfunction. A mix of ataxic spastic dysarthria is common in SCA5 with disease progression. Her final speech diagnosis is a moderate to severe ataxic spastic dysarthria with a definite ataxic component and a potential spastic component. Neurologic follow-up is recommended to assess upper motor neuron functioning. So I hope this helps you put everything together in one final diagnosis. Okay, you could do a bulleted write-up as well. Some evaluation pieces I recommend having: the motor speech diagnosis. Does it fit with the neurological diagnosis? What characteristics support it or are unusual? How confident are you in this diagnosis? What's the severity? Intelligibility, naturalness, efficiency, and an oral MEC summary. Okay, so last thing here, I will say we did a preliminary study with 14 SLPs, and we found that people were 95% accurate in their diagnoses based on the CMSF, compared to previous studies showing 30% accuracy. So having a structured tool to guide you through your observations and translate those into a diagnosis really helps improve diagnosis. Feature reliability was lower. So the reliability that all SLPs would find slow rate of speech, for example, was lower. But this is also helpful to show that feature reliability doesn't have to be perfect in order to get an accurate diagnosis. So don't beat yourself up as you're going through the tool and saying, oh, I don't know if I hear this or not. Just trust your instincts, click on what you identify. And again, the diagnosis at the end seems to be reliable, even if you don't choose the same features that everybody else would choose, okay? Okay, so let's go to, one thing with future directions, I am planning to collect more audio and video examples. So if you wanna be a part of that, go ahead and sign up for the CMSF Clinician Network, and I'll start to send out emails to see if people wanna be a part of sending in audio and video files from patients, and we'll talk about, I can give you more information about IRB and things like that. And we're going to do a lot more studies on reliability and standardization, and we do have a manuscript under review. But for now, and I also want to say, you can email anytime with suggestions, comments, questions. I love hearing from clinicians. This is important to be an accessible tool, but I'm going to leave it open to questions right now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody, and let's open it for questions. And thank you so much for sticking with me as I zoom through this really quickly.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Hilger. This has really been such a practical and clinically relevant tutorial for us. I really do wish this was available when I was working in acute care and rehab settings for sure, but I do plan to start using it soon. So we're going to open the floor now for questions. So I'll be moderating, so feel free to put your question in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask Dr. Hilger a question yourself. I did see one question in the chat if we want to get started with that one, which Roseanne Ganji-Gartner wrote, what do you think about VOT changes, decreasing after first production of each set of DDK?
Whoa, VOT, so voice onset time changes after each production of DDK. I don't know if I can perceptually hear voice onset time. Are you able to, I feel like that's something I do acoustic analysis, but I don't know if I necessarily perceive it. I would definitely put that in your notes. If you hear differences in DDK production each time, I thought I heard voice in a subsequent syllable. Okay, yeah, that's definitely fair. We don't have that as a feature there. I would definitely put it in your notes. We do have a note box at the end of the tool. Put that in the note box. Or you could say that there's overall imprecision. Yeah, okay, I liked that term that somebody wrote. So, and we're always adding terms or adding features as well. So, okay, I hope that helps answer the question. Yeah, maybe put just overall imprecise articulation of the DDKs.
Summers answered, thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Yes, I will. I can share the slides. I can't share the audio files that go with the slides, but I can share the slides with you.
This is also going to be recorded, so you will have access to the recording as well, and that'll be posted several days after this event. And we'll share more information on how to access that very soon.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I don't want to, monopolize the room, but I was wondering if I know you have a lot of future directions that all sound really great. Are you thinking of developing any training for students or for
Yes.
clinicians? Okay, yes.
Yes.
I teach
I'm a
motor
part-
speech too, so
Yes. I love, so Joseph Duffy has the beautiful, audio and video examples through his textbook. So kind of using that as an example, I do picture similar training for students and clinicians, and even a certification for the training. So you can go through the training and get certified and get CEUs. So I plan to do all that. One of the things holding me back is just getting audio and video files. So I need access to that. So it's hard since I don't work in a hospital setting to get those examples. So I'm hoping to work with SLPs to get those. And also applying for NSF and NIH funding to help with that too.
amazing.
That sounds wonderful. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we need
Can I
a
ask
lot.
a quick follow-up to
training.
that? Sorry.
Totally.
Do you think the sounds will ever be like how you have the little info?
Yes.
I don't.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Of course.
Yeah. So having examples for each, yes, definitely. Probably on a separate tab because I don't want to overload that page because I want it to be easily to pop up. But a separate tab where you can hear, okay, what does a breathy voice sound like? What does diplophonia sound like? Yep. Definitely.
We've had a few more questions pop in while you're chatting. Leora Charity let us know that Dr. Duffy's new book is available and put the link in the chat for anyone who's interested. And then we had another question from Dr. Whitney Postman about the evolution of motor speech symptoms in neurodegenerative disease and how this might account for that.
Oh yeah. So if the nice thing about this is it's not a standardized assessment tool where you have to worry about redoing it multiple times with the patient. It's just a tool for you to document your observations. So definitely seeing the patient multiple times and documenting what you're noticing, what features are present now that weren't present last time you saw the patients. I hope that it provides that nice framework for you to notice those features and stay kind of more objective in what you're noticing. But I think that could be really cool. And give you evidence in your evaluation to show that this patient is progressing in their motor speech disorder.
All right. I have one other question if there aren't any others as well.
Yep, definitely.
So you mentioned that this is really a decision-making tool and not a diagnostic instrument at the beginning. And
Yep.
I know in acute care and in many rehab settings, in many settings that we work in, we have limited time available to us. So if you had to prioritize just one or two tasks or sections, like where would you start?
Yes,
this?
totally. Yes. So if I were to do a really quick assessment, connected speech, so maybe just case history, talking with your patient about what they're experiencing, hear what their speech sounds like, DDK, and then if you can do a maximum phonation time, and an oral mech too. You should always do an oral mech. So those are the three main things. And then pulling it up and just noticing what you're observing really quickly, the best that you can. Hopefully it could be administered pretty quickly, especially with the connected speech. In terms of, I wouldn't want to limit like what domains to look at because those really drive treatment. So part of this tool is also to translate into treatment. So to see, okay, is articulation more impacted than vocal quality? So I wouldn't skip over any of the domains necessarily, but you don't have to do all the speech tasks that we recommend.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely. And also you don't have to necessarily have a dysarthria diagnosis. I know there's some controversy in the field of even doing a dysarthria diagnosis, but I do recommend still thinking about what neural area could be implicated. Like, is this a flaccid? Is this a lower motor neuron versus upper motor neuron? Or is it basal ganglia? Starting to think about how this fits into the neurological mechanisms going on. I feel like people get really freaked out sometimes by dysarthria diagnoses, but it's all really just a tool to figure out what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We're going to be wrapping up in just a couple of minutes here. Okay, if not, Amy, do you want to pop up our ending slides?
Yeah, I think this is just a testament to the fact that this was so comprehensive.
I know. I went very fast.
No,
It's
no,
hard.
it was
It's hard to fit
wonderful.
this in an hour, so I will definitely send you the
Yeah.
slides.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it was great.
Yes, and we thank you so much. It was so much information packed in, and we really thank you. And we thank everyone who's attended this webinar. We're really appreciative of all your time and sharing your expertise with our ACRM stroke ISIG. So just some final thoughts. The recording of this presentation will be posted in several days, and you should be able to access it using the same link that you found to get to this webinar. There shouldn't be any password or registration needed. If you do have any issues accessing it, please feel free to email either myself or Amy, and we can definitely help you get access to it and share the slides if Dr. Hilger is willing to share those. We also wanted to let you know that ACRM annual conference is coming up, and it's going to be held in Washington, D.C. on October 13th through 16th. So we hope to see you there. Be on the lookout for some social media postings from the ISIG and PHASIA and the other communication task force, which we're a part of. We'll be highlighting some of the presentations that are of interest to our task force. So thank you again to Dr. Hilger, and thank you for your attention and time. And we hope we see you in future ACRM events. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.